A retired president stood at a graveside and told his own people, I warned you. Former President Uhuru Kenyatta rose to speak at the burial of former Kirinyaga Senator Daniel Karaba Kimaru on April 1st, 2026. He didn't stood, he came to eulogize. Not only he came to recon in the heartland of Mount Kenya, surrounded by mourners, rivals, and former allies, he delivered a message that cut through the funeral air like a plate. The region had been deceived. It had paid the price, and the time for choosing sweetness over truth was over. Kenyatta named the architect of the deception not as a politician, but as a category man with smooth worth and dangerous ambition. He told the mourners that a sweet tongue was not wisdom, it was a trap. The same honeyed voice that could charm a parent into surrendering a daughter to the wrong man had been used to charm entire region into surrendering its political future. He stood before the crowd, speaking plainly in Kikuyu, in the language the hill country demanded that his people hear what he made or what he had been saying for years and had chosen to ignore. He turned his fire on the church religious leaders and he told them he had played an active role in misleading ordinary Kenyans ahead of the 2022 general election. He addressed them with restraint, fury, not with rage, but with the cold, certain of a man who had watched the consequences of their guidance playing out across the country. He urged them to return to their land, heal the soul, leave the political ground to those who understand it. Let God work and the nation work, each be done by people or those equipped to do it. He commanded young voters directly without softening. He never see, never to sell their votes. He acknowledged the reality on the ground that money would circulate, that envelope would appear, that the temptation would be physically and immediate. He told them to take the money if it came, but never hand over the vote as a exchange. Never sell their future for the price of a single night. Oro elevated the vision he had shared with the late Raila Odinga, a Kenya governed by policy and principles, not by tribe and bitterness. He spoke Raila's name at the burial in Kirinyaga, the heart of Mount Kenya, without an apology. He reminded the crowd that the two men, one from the mountain and another one from the lakeside, had built their partnership on one idea that Kenya could only develop if leaders serve people rather than themselves. That idea, he insisted, did not die with Raila. It demanded continuation. The former president is cited former Interior Principal Secretary Karanja Kibichu, who also addressed the gathering as evident that the ground had shifted. Kibichu, a man who spent years at the center of Kenyatta's administration, had been largely silent since 2022, stepped forward at that barrier and demanded that the opposition senior leadership seated together in the front row rise and face the people. He told them that the country needed unity. He told them the ordinary Kenyans present mourners who would return home to empty tables to serve leaders who could hold together long enough to change their condition. In that front row, the full weight of Kenya's political realignment sat visible. and unresolved. Kalonzo Musyoka, Fred Matiang'i, Martha Karua, Eugene Wamalwa, Justin Muturi, and beside them, former Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua, the man Ruto had impeached in October 2024, who now sat in the same political tent as Uhuru Kenyatta, the man he had spent 3 years opposing. Gachagua told mourners that his 2 decade relationship with Kenyatta had never truly broken. The third figure had come between them and driven the wedge. In the end, no one he needed to. Mount Kenya has delivered William Ruto his presidency in 2022. The region had voted in nearly unanimity, rallied by Gachagua, dismissed the Uhuru endorsement of Raila Odinga as a betrayal and chosen the deputy over the presidency. Now, 4 years later, the men who built that coalition were dismantling it in public in a funeral in front of cameras on the same ground where the decision was first made. The political arithmetics that swept Ruto to power was being openly contested in the soil that produced it. Kibicho framed the moment with numbers. He told the front row that half of the mourners in that packed courtyard would return home that evening without food, not because they lacked discipline or drive, but because the nation's labor was flowing into the wrong hands. That was the great real inheritance of the 2022 choice, not a tribe betrayed, not a region humiliated, an economy that had eaten its own people from the inside. Kenyatta closed with the plainest instruction he had given in his Kenya needed leaders, not politicians. The country had enough rhetoric, survival enough, promise, absorbed enough performance. The ground itself was now demanding something different. He said he was listening to the ground. He said the ground called for unity. A man who had been declared politically finished, who had watched his endorsement rejected and his warning mocked, stood at the graveside in Kirinyaga County and told the people the ground remembered everything, and so did he.